Rahul, good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you, Roland?
Fantastic. Thank you. James, how are you keeping?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, Ronald.
Awesome. Martin, last but not least, you got to be good, my man.
Great. Thanks, Ronald.
Now that's fantastic. And I say good afternoon, Dumelang Sanbonani, to all our attendees today. Thank you for joining us for an amazing session today, where we're going to learn so much about business, how we literally utilize a payment gateway to access business internationally, and what we can then do to maximize the opportunity that exists for us all. So as digital commerce grows at a rapid rate globally, is your business geared up to sell products and services online to that global market? Now, today we're going to be finding out all about this with Peach Payments co-founder Rahul Jain, Quicket founder and director James Hedley, and Dineplan director Martin Rose. Now, a little bit about each of our guests. Rahul Jain is an entrepreneur with significant experience in sales, operations, and business strategy. Now, prior to Peach Payments, he advised large retailers and airlines on their online retail marketing and product strategies. James Hedley is the founder and director of Quicket and is at the forefront of the company's strategy and vision. He has been deeply involved in growing the company into a major player in the African online ticketing space. And Martin Rose is the director at Dineplan, a reservation software for restaurants that helps to increase revenue, reduce costs by making the entire restaurant and diner booking process more efficient. Now, I need to declare upfront to all of you that I am a consumer in each one of your businesses. So I am a client. And as you can see, your client is smiling from ear to ear, because at every touch point of my experience, I have been left smiling. I didn't have issues. It was ease, it was convenience, it was efficiency. And I am now so grateful for that. So I feel very blessed to sit with you all today to really unpack this important topic, because my other hat is a business owner. So the information we're going to be unpacking today, I am very interested in. I'm sure many of our audience members are too. So gentlemen, buckle up. It's time to get going. Lockdown may have blocked international flights, but guess what? International payments and global payments can still happen. So let's educate, inform, and guide our audience as to how that happens. Rahul, let's kick off with you. Can you give us a brief history of Peach Payments and how did the journey start?
So, back in 2012, when we started looking at, digital businesses in Africa, one of the biggest things we noticed was, you take an online or e-commerce player in the US or in Western Europe, and the tools and solutions that were available to them versus what was available to businesses in Africa. Businesses in Africa were getting product that was generations behind, not years, but generations behind what Stripe and Braintree and the likes of these players were offering merchants globally. So that's kind of what inspired us to start Peach Payments, is to provide other businesses and merchants a world-class platform that helps them build their business on top of us. So we look at Peach Payments as an infrastructure layer, right? Like the roads or the highways of the digital economy. And how can we enable other entrepreneurs to sell products or services on subscriptions, on one-click checkouts, through mobile interfaces? And that's really how we've been thinking about payments in Africa. There's an interesting anecdote here. We talk about leapfrogging of technology, right? So people in Africa, it's not about mobile first. In a lot of cases, it's mobile only. So consumers are only accessing the internet or only buying or tickets from Quicket or booking a restaurant on Dineplan through mobile interfaces. So how do you cater for that? How do you enable a seamless experience for that consumer so that they smile like you, year to year when they've bought a ticket for an event with Quicket, or they've booked their favorite restaurant? And how do we enable businesses to do that, right? That's always been the vision. We always believe that for society to move forward, you need economic engagement amongst the players, right? You need people to interact economically with each other, with businesses, and vice versa. And at Peach, our objective is, how do we enable that? How do we foster that? And how do we further that so that as an ecosystem, we can help the economy grow. And this is where we firmly believe that the digital commerce and digital economy is the way forward for the continent.
I think that's fantastic. I think that speaks to the ethos, the purpose as to why Peach was founded by yourself, because you saw this gap. But also you're giving consumers peace of mind because it's a trusted, source of transaction. So whenever I utilize it and, you see it's a Peach Payments gateway, for example, for payment, I don't have any stresses. And I'm sure you've built that relationship and that trust with so many consumers, but also for business owners, for them to have the peace of mind that it's leading technology. They've leapfrogged, milestones that other players may still be catching up towards, and you're really giving them the ability to do their businesses with a peace of mind that the digital e-commerce component is well taken care of in a cradle of safety within your ecosystem. Now, Rahul, for those who don't know, what is a payment gateway?
So payment gateway is effectively a service provider or an interface between the merchant or the business and the consumer, right? So let's say you are selling a product or service, or like Dineplan, like you can book a restaurant through their website or through their app, or on Quicket you can buy these event tickets. When the consumer wants to pay and they choose to pay by card or by EFT or by scanning a QR code or by M-Pesa in Kenya or by some other, or a one voucher, one for you, prepaid scratch card. That's exactly what we do, is we work with all of these payment methods and we give one interface to the business and say, we'll let your consumer pick, whatever they choose to pay with. Peach Payments will make all those options available. And as a business owner, you're at peace because you get paid for your product or service. And from a consumer's perspective, you got to transact in your preferred method and how you prefer to pay, right? So if you want to pay by card, that's the way to go, right? You want to pay by your bank transfer, that's the way to go. That's kind of what a payment gateway enables, right? Now, in terms of today, and as we talk about cross-border payments, let's extrapolate this, right? So now you're a business that wants to sell to a global audience. Today what we're trying to unpack is what are all those considerations? How are we going to think about when a user in the US or in the UK or in Europe is buying your product or service? And what do you as a business owner need to think about, right? And what are the implications? What are your options and how does that play out?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And that's exactly where we're going to chat later on to James and Martin, because they are currently doing that. They are playing in that space. They've learned lessons. So I love this sharing opportunity, because we're taking the wisdom from yourself, Rahul, as that engine that drives it. But you're no longer just a transaction engine. You are now an insight and a wisdom engine for businesses like Quicket and like, of course, Dineplan. But Rahul, last question before I shift over into our other guests. In the global context of digital or e-commerce, how does South African businesses shape? Are we behind the curve?
I disagree. I think, if you look at, there are some leading success stories that have come out of Cape Town, forget South Africa, just down the road from us. So, a great example is WooCommerce. Today, WordPress powers 30% of all websites on the internet, and a lot of them for e-commerce use a product called WooCommerce. That was here in Cape Town, right, which was acquired by a global audience. There are many SaaS platforms, digital service providers. There's even products being exported from South Africa and from the broader continent. So I disagree that Africa is behind. I think, in fact, in areas, we're at the forefront, right? We're leading in terms of design. We're leading in terms of quality. We're leading in terms of innovation to solve the unique challenges of the emerging market. Right? Not everything from the US can be transplanted here, but innovations here can be taken to other emerging markets. And I think that's really where we're leading, in fact. Yeah. So I would say, it's time for businesses here to start thinking about how do we go beyond our borders? How do you go and sell your product to the world, right? And that's really what we want to inspire.
Wow, I love that. I love that, because your words are echoing and resonating within my soul and many other business owners' souls. because that is where we aspire. Whenever we set up a business, it starts off small and organically that grows through the service, through your ideas, through your people, through your offering. And ultimately, to play in the global space is where we want to head to. And that's a global impact we want to create. Now, speaking of global players and global impact, James, Quicket has had an inspiring path to success, and you are now playing in that global context. How did Quicket start, and what were some of the motivating factors in moving into the global space?
I started Quicket back in 2011 with my two co-founders, James Tagg and Mike. We just finished university. We were staying in a flat together, and all we really knew is that we wanted to start some kind of business that involved the internet. And so we sat down, we thought about it, and what we realized was there was a need for an easy way to collect money from groups of people. And so that's initially what we set out to do, is build a platform that allows any person to collect money from any group. So it could be for a birthday present or anything. Anyway, we built the product and quickly realized that there wasn't a huge market, and we weren't getting traction. So we went back to the drawing board and asked ourselves who potentially needs this product that we've made, and the obvious answer was event organizers, and in particular smaller event organizers. And so that formed the basis of the strategy. How do we create a self-managed, do-it-yourself platform that empowers anybody to create an event, sell tickets for it, collect the money, do the marketing, collect data on their audience, and all these things. In America, it was a very well-established concept in the form of a company called Eventbrite. Eventbrite wasn't working in Africa, and so we set out to, in some ways, emulate that business model, which is provide a self-managed ticketing platform for Africa. And I mean that was 11 years ago, and it's grown quite incredibly since then. We do about 30,000 events per year now in normal times, and millions of tickets and all these things. And and so to answer the second part of your question, after growing for 11 years, you realize that whilst South Africa and Africa is a vibrant, amazing market, it's still fundamentally quite small. So South Africa makes up about 0.5% of global GDP. So if you want to build a really significant company, you unfortunately can't focus single-mindedly on South Africa, so especially if it's a fairly niche service like what we do. So global expansion is critically important, and it's also critically important to drive you to build a better product. Once you're competing with the best companies in the world, you have to become the best, and that can serve as a huge advantage in South Africa as well. And then I think the second part was we were forced to go online. So during lockdown, all our events became online events, which can be sold anywhere in the world. And so our clients started asking, well, how do we sell tickets to people in America, in Australia, in all kinds of different places? And payments is a really, really critical part of that. And so that's really caused us to kind of accelerate our journey overseas.
I think it's a fantastic story that, based out of necessity and need, as a true entrepreneur, you improvise, you adapt. But the beautiful thing is that you have the right stakeholders at play, the right partners at play. From, like you said, the payment gateway was critical and key, but you actually were asked questions by your customers. That leads me into a question that I want to ask after I chat to Martin quickly. And Rahul, I'm going to leave this to you to mull about, is that when we have the need to begin to transact across borders, there's a currency issue. There's an issue that's not just, it's 5 Rand to the dollar, for example. There's the issue of the timings on when those transactions are happening, liabilities on payment. So we'll get into that a bit later, let you chew on that. But Martin, tell us a bit about how you started Dineplan and what your journey into global payment space looks like for you. I mean, was it straightforward? or did it come with some huge challenges that you managed to overcome?
Good question. Thank you. My story is very similar to James's story. Again, I went to school with now my business partner and co-founder, Greg Whitfield. I used to work in London for 4 years, and during the latter part of those years, I worked at Pocket Table. I learned a lot of lessons there. I was involved with implementing deposit payments while I was there, which wasn't so successful. So interestingly, and I'll touch on a bit later, the success that we've had with it here in South Africa is in contrast to what we've had in the UK. We started Dineplan 9 years ago. James started 11 years. It was quite tough to begin with. Greg was renting out his car to pay for his rent. I fortunately had a wife that was working. Actually, she wasn't my wife at the time. But it was difficult times for us. We had 2 years without a salary. The day we took our first salary, which was 2,000 Rand each, and I think it was November, was the day I actually ran out of money. So it was quite relief. It was quite a relief to have that. I got married the next month, which was very difficult as well. But we only started payments probably about 6 years ago. It was quite an easy transition for us. I'd worked with payments before in London, and we found Rahul and Peach Payments, and they made our lives really easy. The reasoning to go ahead with payments is we had a couple of restaurants that had issues with no-shows with reservations, which is quite commonplace in Cape Town specifically. And so we wanted to try to help restaurants to eliminate that. And by taking a deposit payment, that would ensure that the actual guest would arrive at their booking as they intended. Obviously, if they were to cancel, we set a few rules in place and made sure restaurants abided by them, and still do. But the idea is that if they cancel in time, they can get their money back and orders good. We really didn't see this to grow to being something that would grow as big as it is now. We do a couple of million deposit payments over a month, and we're quite surprised to see the change or the difference that it was to the UK. And people didn't really accept it in the UK, and here in South Africa it was, and it is now quite commonplace for restaurants who want to charge a deposit. And there's also, there's been a bit of kickback from guests in terms of wanting to pay those, and they don't always understand why. But I think they've come around and understand why, and where they've needed to get a refund, they've been refunded. What's been quite difficult when the COVID hit was that a lot of guests needed to get refunds, and to manage, our system wasn't built to manage all of this, and a lot of the money had been already paid over to restaurants, which they pay us back, but we worked late hours trying to get everyone's money back and make everyone happy, which we were quite successful at. Like in December, we probably do about 1.5 million bookings a month, and that kind of fluctuates with season. But hopefully, if things go well, we'll be quite back near there this December. Let's hope the government opens up the international borders with some advance warning to allow international travelers to come back and then spend their money here. It's a huge contribution to our economy, not just restaurants, but everything else that feeds on it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Martin, there's a bit of an audio problem on your side. Let's just check out your network. With the reality of power failures that affects network, you were breaking up a bit of a signal, and our tech team will sort you out. Rahul, listening to these two inspiring stories, this really does light that fire within. What value and role do you see South African business playing in the global context, both enterprise and small business?
So in terms of
Fantastic.
the global context, South African businesses, as you can see, with like just continuing on James and Martin's stories, right? Like with selling tickets for online or digital events that are being hosted out of South Africa, but now with a global audience, like people in the US and Australia wanting to buy, and with with Dineplan, where all these inbound tourists coming in December are booking some of the best restaurants in the city, from the test kitchen to the potluck clubs to the so. And I think there is room for global commerce across the spectrum, right? You have wine farms exporting, you have craft businesses, small businesses now selling highly value added products to global audience. So I think as a business owner, you have to think of a few things when you start thinking of global commerce, right? So one is, fundamentally, are you in a physical product? Are you actually selling a piece of product that needs to be exported out of the country? Or are you selling a digital content or a digital product or service? Because then there's fundamental differences in how you can export that product, right? And I guess the guys here can give a bit more direct experience. I don't have experience around the logistics of exporting products and how does it work, digital versus physical. But I think that's a fundamental question for you as a business owner to think about. The next step is, how do you get that user to pay you, right? And I think this is where we can lend some insight around what are some of the important factors that consumers think about, right? And as a business owner, you mentioned currency, the keyword, you mentioned risk and liability, and I think those are all important topics. So let's start with the first fundamental question, right? What currency should you be selling in? And you need to sell in dollars, do you need to sell in rands? And I think the answer is, it depends. But you have the option to do both now in South Africa. In general, consumers prefer to pay in a currency that's more familiar to them, right? So if you're selling to an American consumer, they prefer to pay in dollars because they understand $10. They don't understand 165 rands 30 cents, right? Which might be the exchange rate of that day. So in general, it is better to sell in the buyer's home currency. But as a business owner, it's an expensive, and there are implications of doing that. So the counter to that is, are you as a business owner just better off first building scale in rand and then starting to diversify and offering that next level of convenience to your consumers? So let me take you through a very simple transaction. So let's say I bought a ticket for Africa Burn from James on Quicket, right? And James, that cost like $2,000, I think.
Did lots of time around there, yeah. Don't stop that.
Exactly. So let's say that costs 2,000 rand, right? Now, if as a consumer, so let's say I'm the American consumer and James the South African business, he sells in rand. When I charge my US card, my card provider's bank will convert the rand amount and charge me in US dollars. Now that could be whatever exchange rate, my bank will decide that, right? James receives 2,000 rands for his sale. Let's say now this event got cancelled. So James is able to refund the exact 2,000 rands, and I carry the foreign conversion. Now the bank will again convert the rands into dollars and give me back my dollars, right? And now here's you mentioned risk. So the person carrying the currency risk is the consumer. If James was selling in dollars and James sold me a ticket for $200 or $100, right? And at that time, the rand was at 16.5. James would have received 1,650 rands for that sale. But by the time he wanted to refund, the rand went to 17. Now he has to pay back 1,700 rands. So while yes, it was easier to make that sale, it depending on what is the product, what is the business model, what is the risk. Do you have a high risk of cancellations and refunds? And does your user really care? I think that's the fundamental question to start thinking of as a business owner before going down either path. right? Both are equally feasible and both are valuable, right? So I don't think business owners or entrepreneurs should get confused and say, oh no, I now need to offer rands and dollars and pounds and euros, and only then I will be successful, right? I think there's a place for both in either. There's a third perspective that Martin will share potentially, is around, should I set up abroad? Like, should I set up an entity outside of South Africa and start transacting over there? And what considerations go into that, right? So there could be some experiences here. And I think that's the third perspective, that a lot of businesses are saying, oh, let me set up in Mauritius and let me take the money there. Or let me set up in the US because Stripe lets me do that. What is really good for your business? I think that's what we want to help people think through in their own context and provide as much information as we can today.
I think that's fantastic. So that's the insight we want to get. So James and Martin, let's leverage off your experience and your journey. So to both of you, what were some of the factors you considered when setting up a payment system for Quicket and Dineplan, knowing that you will be transacting outside of the borders of South Africa? James, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when we first started out with Quicket, I think we went through about 3 different payment gateways. We had some serious nightmares with all of them, and it was only once we integrated with Peach and got our payments going through Peach that we actually solved that problem. And so Peach has been very, very critical to our success. Because payments is ticketing. I mean, it's a huge part of it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd like to thank Peach for sorting that out. I think in terms of what you should consider when setting up any payment system is, I think it comes down to 3 things. Firstly, it's the price that you're paying. Processing money can get really expensive, especially if you're a ticketing company. It's our single biggest cost of anything. And then the second really critical part is conversion. So of the people that try and pay for something, how many of those people drop out of the process? A low conversion rate means you lose a lot of money. And so it's always a delicate balance. How strict do you want your fraud processes to be? What payment methods do you want to offer and all these things, because ultimately it affects conversion rates. And then reliability is obviously also extremely critical. You need a payment gateway that works all the time. It doesn't go down. Because even it can go down for even 10 minutes, and that's lost money. So price, conversion, reliability, and then obviously there's specific features that many clients need. So if you need things like subscription functionality, a specific reporting, all these types of things, you need to assess whether or not your payment gateway actually has those. And again, we've been really amazed by the fact that Peach has been able to offer us this. When it comes to global processing, I think you really got to decide how much you want to invest in it. So what we've found is, if we are collecting money from, say, Europe and America, these type of places, the conversion rate on those cards is quite a lot lower if you're billing them from a South African credit card gateway. And that's because the American banks often don't recognize South African gateways. It's not infinitely lower, it's a small cost, and you've got to decide for yourself, is it worthwhile incorporating in America or Europe, setting up a local bank account there, going through this entire process and cost just to increase that conversion rate slightly? It's a cost benefit analysis. In our case, we're having to go down that route, but you need to assess it for yourself. And then I think you've got to be very clear about who your clients are. and how do those clients pay for things. So if you're trying to expand into Kenya, for example, that's 90. I would guess Rahul can correct me. I think about 95% of payments are made with M-Pesa. Credit cards totally insignificant. You actually don't even need it. So that's a whole new payment system, and you need to work with ones that can process M-Pesa. America, Europe, you can get away with purely with credit card there. But you need to think about what currencies you're charging in and all these things. So, I think just to sum it up, you need to be very clear about who you're selling to, and then work back from there.
Oh, fantastic! I think as simple as that, and it really boils down to your market research, etc. But as you mentioned there, as you gave a lot of kudos into Peach, and I echo those sentiments, because as far as I'm concerned, my experience with Peach Payments has been as a gateway, as a transaction advisor in the context of what am I going to use in our business, especially as we go global, is I don't want someone to just give me a gateway to say money comes in, money goes out. You can use this option or that option. I want a partner that'll give me insights to better my offering with what we're trying to achieve as a business. And that's exactly what you echo through that. Martin, now to you. Did you ever consider opening up bank accounts outside of the country to facilitate your global payments? And if so, how did it go? And if not, what did you look at in considering your payment gateway?
Yes, we did, and we do have international accounts. When we first went down this journey, we got put in touch with Rahul and very early on, and luckily we didn't have to go through 4 different payment gateways. So we were spared those hardships, and we've been very happy with Rahul and Peach Payments, and they offer a very excellent level of support and service, and they have a very good product. With Dineplan, we've got 2 kind of needs for payments. One is deposit payments, so a more ad hoc approach where someone will make a booking for a restaurant and they'll need to pay, say, 200 Rand deposit to get that booking. And on the other hand, we have subscription based payments where actual clients of ours, restaurants, will need to sign up and pay a monthly subscription to use our software. In South Africa, we don't do that. We have a debit order. Internationally, we have a recurring subscription model, and we've done integration with Stripe to facilitate that. Stripe, in my opinion, being a developer, makes life very, very easy. And it was a very quick setup process once you've got all your documents online. And I mean, if you're a developer, it's the perfect thing to be looking at. You can fully integrate it. In terms of looking at first world countries, that's where Stripe really comes into its own. If you're talking about Africa, then, and I think James made a very good point there, was what kind of payment methods do people use in different countries? So I think in those circumstances, you need to really look at local payment providers, like people like Peach, where they can offer those payment methods to help you with those conversions. We have a lot of international guests that will make reservations at the kind of top restaurants here in South Africa, namely like Alarm and the Test Kitchen, and there's a number of others like Fane and CBD in Cape Town. Now, this is quite a challenge sometimes because we enforce 3D Secure, which unfortunately it lowers the conversion rate. However, in our circumstance, conversion for deposit payments is not such a big issue for us because the restaurant requires them to pay that. And we do offer EFT payments as well, and people pay international EFT. There is quite a big cost to that, especially in South Africa, but I'll come back and touch on that in a moment. But I just want to kind of touch back on what James was saying in terms of the payment coming, the conversion rates of that payment. There's some of it that kind of lies in your hands and making it as easy for the user to actually make that payment. But some of it's out of your hands in kind of James and Dineplan, for example, where James, you are getting people to buy tickets for an event that someone else is hosting. So they must really want to go to this event, and so the more they want to go there, the better they'll try and make that payment. So those kind of things are a little bit out of your control, and likewise with the reservation. And then Rahul touched on it a bit earlier with the payment and the refund and the exchange rate being different. We do get a bit of that. Maybe we get one every 2 months where a guest would email us a bit upset about the money that they got back and they've been shortchanged maybe $1 or whatever. But on the other hand, there are people that probably get more money back and we don't get from them. So maybe we get a bunch of them on average. Payments on our side, it's been pretty easygoing. Stripe has certainly helped a lot with the recurring payments. To be honest, we haven't looked at using Peach for recurring payments here in South Africa. But what we do use Peach for as well is we tokenize credit cards, which can actually lead to quite a big cost saving down the line, especially if you start building a database of guest profiles where a card is linked to a profile. So in subsequent charges, there are lesser fees. And again, it's more secure than.
That's fantastic. I think it's great to hear and to see what's working for you. And, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, I see there's a lot of questions being posed from our brothers and sisters in our African countries, asking more about how can they transact and utilize the Peach payments based on the war stories that you've given us. But Rahul, for businesses to be resilient in global e-commerce, what are the key factors they should be aware of?
So I think, one thing that we saw during this whole COVID crisis has been that a lot of resilience came from just being available on digital channels. So, I remember back, I think on the 18th of March, at Peach, we took a decision to mandatory go work from home. So we sent the whole team home and we said, listen, out of abundance of caution, we're going to shut down the office. And a week later, our president initiated the lockdown, and we were worried about April, and we were wondering, what's going to happen? Are we going to see a dip in volumes, and how are businesses going to sustain this? And what we saw was significant resilience. So all businesses that were online. There are fundamental challenges with certain industries, as both Quicket and Dineplan, unfortunately, were significantly, in travel, entertainment, or, those fundamental sectors, there were no airline tickets being sold or restaurants were shut. So, but what we saw was adaptation, right? So retail businesses, for example, were doing a lot more sales online versus what they were doing in their physical stores. So I think resilience, one, comes from being available across the different channels, right? The other thing is, as a business owner, if you're you have a store, you can still only reach your local audience. So if you want to think about global audiences, then having an e-commerce store opens up the world for you. It's about where you market it, and then managing the logistics of exporting the product, etc. But I think, and then so it's from a resilience perspective, I firmly believe that digital will drive fundamental resilience in businesses in the future as well.
Now that's fantastic, and I love that optimism. I love the optimism that comes through the realistic viewpoint as well. So I'll label that as realistic optimism, that the digital will bring that resilience component in, but also it allows entrepreneurs to think as if there is no box. They always say, think out of the box. I'm like, no, think as though there is no box. And the digital allows you to do that in a very unique way, provided you have the right partners on board with you and the right vision and strategy. Now, James and Martin, what advice would you give to a business wanting to take the step into the global market? What should they be thinking about?
Maybe it's not such a big thing to think about to begin with. My kind of thinking around getting a business started and start making money before you start thinking about how I'm going to start paying taxes and and legitimizing it. So start making a business, start making money, and then think about those tax implications. But obviously, the thought process, there needs to be a thought process in terms of what payment provider you need to use, what currencies you want to charge. And in my opinion, people like to pay in their own currencies where they can. And that's backed up by data online if you want to go research that yourself. Yeah,
I think that's great advice, because I love what you said. As an entrepreneur, we're chasing the business. We want to get the business done. But we don't realize, guess what? You are going to pay tax. Wherever you're going to be, you're going to pay the tax, man. They say there's two things that are certain in life. And the first one is always you're going to pay tax. So I think that's great insight to have from a business perspective, because you need to take that into consideration from your pricing, from your structures, from your financial processes, etc. Because you might think you're making a profit, but once you get a tax bill, you need to maybe adjust certain elements of your business. James, on your side, do you have any insight on that for us? On thinking about as we want to enter this global space?
Yeah, so we have expanded into a number of different countries. I think we have bank accounts in about 6 different countries now. And I think what any person expanding needs to be aware of is that it's easy to think that just because you have a working business here in South Africa, that working business will easily be transplanted into another country and you can just set it up. But in my experience, it's always been a lot harder to get traction than you think it will be. So my advice would be, really do your homework and think of every new country you're expanding into as a new business altogether. You need to do a SWOT analysis. You need to understand who the competition are. You need to understand what price you should be entering in, who have some potential clients, how much is it going to cost you, what are the local regulations, what are the local taxes, and really, really invest in doing homework first. And do your homework in a lot of different countries, because I think there's 140 different countries throughout the world. The opportunities might not actually be where you think once you start digging deep. We're all very drawn to massive markets like America that have $14 trillion economies, but those markets also incredibly competitive. Okay, there's often some really great opportunities on the fringe of the big established markets. Like, if you look at what NASPERS has done, they've looked at emerging markets, places like Russia, places like Poland that speak different languages, that have weird regulatory environments. These things make breaking into a market harder, but they also keep the competition out. So that's it. I think really, really do your homework and look for opportunities where other people aren't looking for them. And there's a lot of those in Africa. And then I think again from a payments perspective, first prize in my opinion is always to have the local bank account linked up to the local payment methods and to sell things in the local currency. That's always going to work better than anything else, but there's a huge cost to that. Okay, it's managing an integration with another payment gateway. It's managing another bank account, which I can tell you in Africa is an absolute nightmare. And a whole new tax system, a whole new set of books. Don't underestimate how much that costs, and in many cases, sometimes it makes more sense to just go with a lower cost option to start whilst you're getting traction, and then invest in going the whole 9 yards and getting all the local payment systems set up.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for that insight. And I think that, you're speaking about the war scars that you've been through. I could just see that expression when you talked about having bank accounts in certain African countries is very different. So you need to be a little bit awake and alert. As they say in South Africa, you got to be vase, you got to be wakker, you got to be awake, you got to be alert in that space. But gentlemen, taking a business global used to be a monumental task that costs millions. However, digital and e-commerce obviously makes those steps much easier, but there is a difference between selling skills and services and selling goods. What considerations should businesses in both sectors make before deciding to go global? Any of you, who's stepping up?
Well, I think Martin and James can talk about from the digital perspective. Just from a physical goods perspective, one thing I'd like to add for business owners is how do you export your product, right? Are there restrictions? So before you go online, I think coming back to that homework topic is how do you do the homework on can you get your product into that country? Are there import duties that you'll have to pay there? What is the restriction? What's the paperwork you need? What kind of product are you exporting? A lot of countries every country will have its own rules. So it's not a cookie cutter, right? That, I can send it to the US, so therefore I can send it to Kenya. It actually doesn't work like that. So especially if you're a physical product retailer, you need to potentially work with good logistics partners, big global logistics partners who can kind of outsource or offload that pain for you and manage it. Yes, shipping is more expensive. And also, can you actually ship your product? Will your product arrive in the condition that your customer expects it to when it does eventually show up? Or is it not going to look as good, and then you're going to have dissatisfied customers? So I think there's a number of details that need to be thought through. We have merchants selling everything from jewelry to art to handicraft products to wine, and a lot of them are exporting. But I can tell you that there's a lot of logistics in just getting that product to the customer with these merchants and businesses. So in some of those cases, honestly, payments is the easier part. It's the getting the product to the customer that is the puzzle piece to be solved for.
But I think that speaks again to what James and Martin have spoken about today, is that understand the market, understand your business, understand that what is the entire value chain from South Africa, wherever else you are packaging a particular product, and where is it going along? What are the touch points? What are the pricing points? What are the legislative points in the different areas and markets that you play in? But Martin and James, that question now to you from a services perspective, because that's essentially what you're creating. Has it been particularly easier for you in that context, based on what we've heard from Rahul?
I think before you break into a new country, when selling a SaaS product, you first need to really say, is there a need for this product that I'm selling? Do people actually need the service? And then if the answer to that question is yes, you have to say, well, how big is that market? Is it actually worth me flying over there, spending hundreds of thousands of rands, going to do this, and the market's not really that big. We've had this experience in some small markets. So, it's just, no matter how hard you try, there's just not enough money there. And then the third part to that is, what is the existing competitive landscape, and will I be better than that competition? Will I be able to bring something unique to the market that will give me an advantage? And that's how I would really assess assess a new market based on those three principles.
Fantastic. Martin, from your side, any pearls of wisdom for us?
I've got a kind of a different approach to that. And I mean, maybe James will come and touch on what you said earlier. But I mean, I feel like we've got a software as a service model where, anyone in the world can use it. So, I mean, as long as we make it globally available, we've got people from Myanmar as clients, if you know where that is. We've got people from all over the world. So, and they just find us online. We don't spend a lot of money on marketing. Our SEO, I imagine, is decent. And also, and being South African based, our costs are better than our competitors, and we offer equivalent software, if not better, in some fields. So maybe this is kind of where I'm going to come back to you, James, and say, what is it that you do when you decide, okay, I'm going to pick a country and go there? What are why not go global and say everyone can use our software, or maybe you do this already, and then you cherry pick certain countries, say we're going to put a bit of effort in there, we're going to employ someone, set up a partnership, And before I hand over to you, I'm just going to say, I mean, we have this kind of globally available sign up where people can come in and join Dineplan. But I mean, we have 1 or 2 partners around internationally, and for us, it's much better having a presence in a country where someone's actually pushing it and trying to sell your product. And it makes it much more efficient that way.
Oh wow! I mean, Martin, thank you for that. I think I love this robustness because it speaks to the different areas of business. And I mean, Rahul, I see you smiling there because this is the discussion we want to get into the meat of, So James, Martin asked a question. What do you have to say to it, brother?
Yeah, so very good question. I think in countries where we can use our Stripe integration, we are pretty much able to just start operating. But the clients need to have their own Stripe account. In countries that don't have Stripe, it requires that we have to set up bank accounts. We have to collect money. We need a set of accounts. We often need a local partner. All these things just in order to collect money and pay it out within a single country. So that it's just an inherent cost to it. And that's mainly in Africa actually. The underlying payments infrastructure is just years and years behind, and the complexity and difficulty of being able to collect money into a bank, process it, and then pay it back out at scale it's a tough exercise.
And I think James, you also it's the exchange rate that creates the issue. So I mean, it's very easy to collect money and then say send it to your bank account in the UK or the US or wherever it is. But if you're collecting that money, say it's in Kenyan shillings, and then you need to pay it out in Kenyan shillings, I mean, you can't put it into US dollars and then bring it back again. And there's the cost of sending the money and the fees around that makes it quite expensive.
Yeah, well, you also can't use an American payment gateway to collect cards in Kenya. Like we've tried this. The lion's share of them just get blocked, and most people don't actually have credit cards that will work. So it's just not an option. So I think my viewpoint's quite influenced by our arduous attempts at trying to get e-commerce and ticketing working across Africa. Amongst with 5 or 6 different currencies, 5 or 6 different bank accounts. In Europe, in America, it's much easier to do, and you can do it at scale a lot more quickly. But there, it's a much more competitive environment. We're competing against the biggest ticketing companies in the world, and so that's at least my perspective. It's always a delicate balance between how competitive is the market and how easy it is to operate there, and you've got to kind of find that happy medium between the two.
No, and you have to find that medium for your own space, your own type, your own service, your own business, in your experiences and what you then go through. So, gentlemen, thank you for being honest and sharing that with us, because this is part of what these sessions are all about, is to give our audience members who have these aspirations, these dreams, the plans to get global, to begin to ask these questions, to interrogate their business and their processes and their thoughts so that they could get to market globally a lot quicker, a lot more effectively and efficiently. Now, Rahul, what was discussed in that banter between Martin and James was issues around, something that is important and critical within any payment structure. And I know that this is extremely high on each payment's priority list. Security and data protection is such a consideration. And Peach has gone above and beyond duty to ensure that that safety is a top priority. What measures are in place, not only for merchants using Peach payments, but also for consumers who use merchant platforms?
So in terms of data security, I think it affects equally both our merchants and consumers, right? As a consumer, it's very important for consumers to understand that, when you have a card, you have some natural protection on that, on that transaction. As a consumer, you have the right to dispute a transaction. You have the right to, to query that transaction with the merchant. But on the merchant side, there is protection available in terms of 3D Secure, right? So when we look at now, every cardholder is required to enter an OTP and is required to authenticate a transaction. That is to protect the merchant, so that you as a consumer don't change your mind tomorrow that, oh, I don't really want this product, so let me go and dispute that transaction, right? There has to be a valid and legitimate reason. So I think there's been some developments and maturity in the process, which now protects both the consumer and the business in equal parts. And I think this is where, different payment methods and consumer preferences change. So consumers don't have a protection if they use EFTs, for example, because once that money is out of your bank, it's impossible to bring it back, right? If the merchant was fraudulent. Same with other methods like M-Pesa. You can't recall that money. You can call the merchant and they can return. So I think you have to, where is the, what affects the, what can challenge those processes needs to be considered. From a data security perspective, the biggest concern has been around protecting cardholder data. So protecting those 16 digits of your card number that you enter on the website. And that's what you're worried about. Oh, did my card get skimmed? Or, has someone else accessed those 16 digits and is now shopping on my card and ordering, shoes and bags and everything. So apart from the dispute mechanism or the chargeback protection that you have as a consumer, what we do at Peach is, we work with merchants like Quicket, with Dineplan and all our other merchants, and make sure that no cardholder data touches their servers and systems. So, while you're still transacting on that checkout page and their checkout page, it's a JavaScript widget that sits on it. It's PCI DSS level 1 certified, and ensures that we protect our merchants and their team members from not having access to card data. So if you don't have access to card data, there is no opportunity for anything to go wrong, right? And from a Peach perspective, we have to live up to, an audit process that happens every quarter. We have to make sure that our systems are compliant and certified according to the latest data security standards that MasterCard, Visa, and the global regulators publish, right? So there's significant efforts being made at a Peach level, and then trying to pass that through to our merchants in a way that if we eliminate the card data from touching the systems, then there is no problem for them to deal with, right? So I think there's a few approaches we are taking there, but rest assured, from a data security and from a consumer protection perspective, that's really what we care about and we focus on a lot.
Fantastic. And Rahul, Peach Payments is by far the most comprehensive independent payment gateway in the country. When businesses choose Peach Payments, what are some of the benefits of their choice?
So I think, and this was not a paid advertisement, right, with James and Martin, and that's from their experience of having worked with us for years. But I think some of the points that they highlighted, right, the flexibility that we bring to merchants to meet their requirements. So, we talked about supporting mobile interfaces or subscription payments or one-click checkout. So whether you're a large enterprise, like we work with, brands like Reebok, Adidas, New Balance, Zando, or you're an SME and, just starting up, we offer an enterprise-grade solution that's available equally across your business size, right? Enterprise merchants need a bit more flexibility. They need reconciliation data. They need APIs. They need flexible platforms. We are able to offer that. SMEs need partnerships and integrations with Shopify, with Wix.com. Someone asked a question around WooCommerce plugins today. And that's really what we also build out for all our SME customers, is all these integrations into these platforms. So I think, from a business perspective, all the features that we offer our large customers are also available to our SME customers in some way or form. And I think that's kind of what we think about, making sure that, we get waves of startups. So I remember back in the day, we got a lot of the meal kit businesses, selling ingredients. So most of the meal kits in South Africa were sold through us. So even today, we still do all the payments for YouCook, for example, right? Then we got a lot of logistics players. So we did the payments for Pickup and OneDrop and Pargo and Aramex and CourierIt. And now we've seen InsurTech, right? A lot of the new InsurTech players, we are helping them collect the premiums. So I think for us, we focus on saying, how is consumer behavior going to change? how are business models going to change, and what will our merchants need as features to enable this new way of doing business. And that's what we go out and build for them.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, when I looked at the nuances around our business in the health sector, it's health content, it's media, it is a combination of subscription, pay-per service, dealing with multiple providers that we need to facilitate payments with and customers across different currencies. And in doing thorough investigations and processes, I need to tell you that I actually signed up with Peach Payments 2 years ago, knowing that I'm going to use them, irrespective of which other player came to the market. And guess what, guys? We're going to market with Peach Payments. So, that for me is exciting, because even back then in doing the homework and the research, as a smaller business, we felt the support through the offerings and services given. So it makes my life easier because I'm about getting the business done, but it makes my operations and financials team's life a lot easier too, and our customer relations teams, because they're going to have less issues dealing with customers and payments. So I think that's the same sentiments echoed by our two guests, James and Martin. Now, the final question to James and Martin. Gents, as business owners, reputation is one of the most key elements of being able to thrive in the economy, thrive in business, especially as you scale up to global business. Having safe and secure payment options needs to be a priority. What advice do you have for small businesses when making payment gateway choices? And, is security perhaps even more important than functionality?
I'll take this one. I mean, security is of utmost importance. With the cost implications, ease of implementation, as Rahul was saying, have the payment providers already built plugins for you just to install? I see there's a lot of questions here about, say, using WooCommerce and WordPress. If you're looking at those type of platforms, a lot of these platforms, a lot of the payment providers will need to build plugins, otherwise they'll lose business to the other providers that have those plugins. And a lot of guys starting businesses don't necessarily have the funds to pay developers to do all these integrations. So it's a big cost saving to someone trying to start these type of businesses. And then just coming back to what you said a little bit just before you ended your sentence, there was kind of like reputation management, and I just want to touch a little bit about chargebacks. And a lot of people actually don't know that it's possible. Internationally, we find that more people know about it. When a chargeback happens, it's quite an arduous task for us. Because there's a couple of factors that come into play. One is, firstly, we're charging the customer as Dineplan. They think they're booking at the test kitchen and expect to see the test kitchen on their bank account statement. Unfortunately, it's not possible to kind of show those kind of account descriptions on the statement as per the restaurant we're trying to charge for. And so sometimes we do get queries out there and chargebacks relating to that. And then there's a lot of evidence that we have to provide. But one thing you should be looking for is to make sure you're doing 3D secure. If you're not doing that, there's a very big chance that the banks will at least automatically debit your account, and you'll be liable to give that money back.
All right, good awareness. Thank you for that heads up. I made notes, mental notes, and physical notes, because that's really good consideration we're going to pull into play as well. Gents, we have a couple of questions that have come through, and I need to thank Josh from Peach Payments. Then he was on the ball answering a lot of the questions that came up in the chat. So if ever you're wondering about the customer relations and the service from Peach Payments, guys, in a live webinar, the questions got answered like this. So Josh, kudos to you and for representing Peach Payments. But there's two questions in particular, Rahul, I would like to address with you. The first question from Tobias: does Peach Payment offer a wallet system for marketplace websites? Where can I pay both my merchants and customers directly into the wallet, which they will be able to transfer there into their bank account? And does it also, does all of this integration work with Shopify? Please advise.
Yeah, so I think there's a short answer and there's a long answer. Yes, we do allow businesses to get paid from the consumer and also pay out to their suppliers and their partners or vendors on their marketplaces. No, we don't do a wallet, because a wallet by definition becomes a store of value and then requires different licensing in South Africa. So we're not storing any third-party money in any, other account. It's the funds are collected by the merchant, and then we provide them all the tools to then forward the funds over to the partner. So yes, we do have a lot of marketplaces. Actually, both the gentlemen here potentially work, use both sides of our solution as well. And then there's on Shopify, with these platforms, there's always a trade-off. You get a ease of use and no code solution when it comes to the front end and the e-commerce aspects, and you get plug and play solutions for payments, but you lose a bit of the flexibility. So I think that one I would work with the person and explore with them to see what is possible for their particular requirements.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rahul. And the last question from Tebe Pele. In my opinion, you have to get rid of that monthly fee. All your competitors are not charging any monthly fee like a bank. Remove this, and most startups like myself will be attracted. It's rather a comment than a statement. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, James made a comment earlier around conversion rates, right? And then saying, okay, how does conversion make a difference? So I understand the topic around SMEs, and it's something we're actively discussing and working on a price plan that reduces or removes this hurdle completely. So hopefully in the next few months, you will see something like that coming out from our side. But at the end of the day, we also focus a lot on the value we deliver. Can I help you get 1% more conversion on your website? And how does that then offset costs for you as a business, right? So, and I think really that's where what we try to work with our merchants to focus on and say, okay, what value will Peach deliver? We had a recent merchant where we helped them increase conversion by 10 percentage points. Now, at that point, when you get selling 10 percentage points more, the cost conversation becomes a different conversation. So I think we're not a price competitor. We're not the cheapest in the market, but we want to deliver the most value to our partners and our businesses.
Oh, fantastic, Rahul. Thank you so much for that insight and giving them this. The last question, Jens, is a question that snuck in here.
Okay.
And I think it's very relevant if we look at what we're dealing with in the world. So it says here from Basil, has there been any mention of possible cryptocurrencies to be introduced in the near future?
So I think particularly around the topic of cross-border transactions, cryptocurrencies are very interesting. If you look at just purely from a cost basis, getting money across the border is really expensive. So if you do a bank transfer, you're going to pay at least 500-600 Rand plus an FX fee to the bank. If you're doing a credit card transaction, the total cost is actually comes to around maybe up to sort of 7% when you factor in the amount that the card holder is paying their bank for FX fees. So globally, it's the banks and the various players are making tremendous amounts, like hundreds of billions of dollars, off cross-border transactions. And I think that, and having experience in technology, cryptocurrency has the ability to make cross-border transactions free and instant. And there's already some versions that are linked to the US dollar that aren't highly volatile, that are less kind of scary than things like Bitcoin. And I think there's definitely a huge role for this technology to play in the future. And I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see governments adopting crypto technology for payments.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that insight and for sharing. Jens, in closing, if businesses are to ask themselves one key question before choosing to sell products and services globally, what would that be? Martin, you first.
Well, it's can your product be used globally without having to ship it? I think Rahul touched on this earlier. You got to decide what you're selling. If you are selling software, it's much easier to get that out globally. If you're selling something that you need to ship to someone, I mean, there's the whole other side of the business there in terms of procuring that, sending it on to the person that's paying for it. I mean, exchange control. You can't, there's certain things that you cannot import into certain countries. So, yeah, if you're trying to sell a piece of software, it's a lot easier to do international payments and delivery of that to people than actual physical product.
Awesome. Thank you so much. James, over to you.
Yeah. So my advice would be to get absolutely crystal clear on who your clients are, how you're going to appeal to them, and how you're going to stand out in a new market. Do your homework, as I mentioned before, and be absolutely know what your business plan is before you enter a market, and do that before you even think about it, because the costs of entering a new market are often a lot more than you expect.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Rahul, final word from your side.
So I think, today it sounds like, oh, it's so daunting and, cross-border is so hard and there's so many considerations. But I think my final words are, profit is a reward for risk-taking. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make sure that you go into it with eyes wide open, and share some of our experiences so that you don't trip on the same places we might have already tripped previously. Right. But at the end of the day, there is still huge global opportunity. So let's not forget that. And let's there is opportunity out there that we can all maximize on.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So I've taken out pearls of wisdom from this. I'm excited for our cross-border expansion in our business. And when I look at it, Rahul, you are so right. This session has given me the insight into the journey that has been walked before. And already throwing forward to what James mentioned about cryptocurrency, Martin interrogating, there's different options when looking at different markets. And also hearing the issue on, bank transactions and fees. And from your side, to give me the peace of mind that I have the right partner in Peach Payments with us. And I'm not the only one that thinks that, because our poll went up and the question was, do you want to set your business up online to sell globally? And 45% said, yes, let's get started. And 54% eventually, but I'm not ready right now. And for those that are not ready, if it's anything to do with your business, your process, your structure, your plan, get the right input and advice. But if you want the information on an experience and players that have gone into that space, that have bumped their heads and that really rose after being knocked down, Peach Payments is your partner to talk to, and they can link you up with other insights that you may need to make those decisions. I need to say to you all, thank you for joining us. To our guests, you have been amazing. Rahul, thank you for sharing your knowledge, your passion. And as you can see, the passion by which you started Peach Payments has led to impacting two of our amazing guests, all their staff, other businesses as well. So you have created that ripple effect through. So thank you for that. To Martin, I'm going to continue using Dineplan. It's just awesome for me. And I'm not one of those guys that requested money back or chargebacks. I use it. I love it. I can access and see who's available and not available. So, that for me is the convenience, and it's efficient and it's effective. And to dear old James, you and your Quicket. I've got so many of our teams and our people that are creating events as smaller events and growing it and, sending us the Quicket payment links that we just keep supporting each and every one of you in those spaces. So you are part of our lives. I say to you all, if you need more information, want to find out more about how Peach Payments can get into your area, get into your country, you can start using it as a business, using it to transact and to bring that peace of mind to your processes. Email sales@peachpayments.com and they will be there to help you. I say to you all, have an amazing day, have a great one. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep building up your wealth. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye.